And
copy paste.
Copy paste. Sorry, I'm not Enneagram 3. and I do not shit in the woods. I don't do it. They're like outdoorsy people, and I'm just like, no. I like going on a hike and then coming home.
Like you're like, I've got a destination in mind. I get there, I come back, and it's good. I had a little exercise, I saw some nature, and we're good to go.
The Lord gave us indoor plumbing.
Yes.
Right?
You're listening to Enhance, the podcast dedicated to highlighting real stories told by real people.
Hello, Enhance listeners. This is Sam Brown. I am your host, as usual, and today I am joined by my boss and friend, Parker. It's so weird to say that you're my boss whenever we're like hanging out and not at work. But
yeah, it's a little strange.
But I actually have had the privilege of meeting and working with Parker on the movie I'm currently on. So, Parker, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello. My name is Parker Esoda. I work with Samm. As he said, in accounting. I started out as a CPA, working in public accounting and auditing, and then jumped into film.
Well, Parker, to get us started, I have a little icebreaker for us. So
Yes.
Normally I like to ask questions that are sort of like personality reflections, provoking thought questions. I don't know if you knew this or not, but I actually used one of your questions earlier. I think it was on the second episode. No, it was actually just a couple of episodes ago. On the realism versus toxic realism episode, I asked my friend CJ if she knew that the world was going to end in 6 months, and she was the only person that knew and couldn't tell anybody, what would she do? So that was kind of, and I credited you in the episode. So
well, thank you.
You're welcome.
It's your full send.
Yes.
My favorite.
But today, because this is a shared interest that we have, I want to ask you a different question. Mm-hmm. So tell me, what is the weirdest dream that you have ever had?
Yes. I actually, a couple days ago, had one of the weirdest dreams I've ever had in my entire life. I dreamt that I committed a jewelry heist with Matt Bomer, and but like specifically from White Collar, you know? Yeah. Neil. And it was $10 million.
Oh my God. Okay.
Whatever we sold was $10 million worth or something.
Understandable.
And then there was you only remember so much, but it was very stressful, and I couldn't take the guilt, and I was just like, I did it. And there was a detective, and I was basically like texting the detective, would I go to jail if I gave you everything you needed to know? And like Matt Bomer is like, shut up. And I just couldn't stop. And then but they still didn't have enough proof to send us to jail. But all I could think was, I'm going to jail.
Oh my God.
I'm going to be in prison.
Did you get to keep the like $10 million worth of jewels?
Well, so it was, I think Matt Bomer, he had the jewels, but I like knew where they were. Oh, it was so stressful. And then in the end, I faked my death. I just couldn't take it anymore. And so I was like, I'm out. And
I couldn't see it. You need to write a script, make this into a movie, call it like Guilty Conscience or something like that.
I just couldn't handle it. And then I was one of those, I woke up and was truly relieved. I was like, thank God. It's not real.
I'll share my weird dream with you, because I had a very similar reaction to it last night, and I wanted to tell you anyway. So, I've shared with you that I've always wanted to do stunts. I always thought it was something that'd be pretty cool, mm-hmm. and I've just never really been fit or in shape, but now I'm working on it, mm-hmm. and I'd really like to be a stunt double one day. I think it would be really cool. Well, that like seeped into my dreams last night, and I don't think I want to do it anymore. Because...
the dream became a dream, which made it a reality.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, no. So in the dream, it was on a movie where we were working with a lot of the stunts people that we're currently working with, and you were there. It was all very chill, very fun. Uh-huh. But something happened during the actual filming where I was in a fight scene with someone, and I was like stunt doubling. But at some point in the doubling, the acting became real, and I was really like beating the shit out of this person. Uh-huh. And like when the scene was over, they had like broken bones and were like had to go to the hospital, and their parents for some reason showed up and were suing me. And I was like, I thought we were acting. Like, I didn't realize I was actually hitting him. Like, I'm so sorry. But they were like, how could you not feel your fist, like, hitting his face? Because, like, I took this poor kid and, like, took him by his arm and, like, whipped him over my shoulders and, like, body slammed him. It was terrible. So, needless to say, I don't think I want to do stunts anymore because I'm afraid I'll actually, like, hurt someone.
Or yourself.
Yeah.
It's pretty dangerous.
Yeah. Well, I guess this is a good time to introduce our topic. So today, Parker and I are talking about religion, but specifically we are talking about it from a Christian point of view. So Parker and I both have a very similar background when it comes to how we were raised. We were both raised Christian and conservative, and we've talked a lot about that because when we grew up and kind of got away from that environment and became educated and took our education into our own responsibility, we both reacted in like similar ways, but also very different ways, where I sort of like rebelled against Christianity and like had the complete opposite flip. Parker dove deeper into Christianity and found a lot of the same truths that I found, but it made her relationship with Christianity a lot stronger. So I thought that was a very interesting perspective. So do you want to start us off in talking about kind of your background and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah. Oof. Yep. So went to church, you know, the youth group, the whole shebang, where like you have church on Sundays and then Sunday nights it's like youth group, whatever, and mission trips in high school, all that stuff. Went to college, found a college ministry, same old, around a lot of the same people that think the same ways. And then I left college and started going to a different church. And it was fine, and I was all good about it. And to be clear, I church hopped a lot because I was clearly I felt like something was off, but wasn't admitting I thought something was off. So like my senior year of high school, I changed churches and left the youth group I was going to and went to a different one because I had more of my friends. I liked the college minister. And then in college, my junior year, I left that college ministry that I was in leadership with.
Oh.
Yeah. I didn't like certain things. It felt wrong. Couldn't really pinpoint it other than I just like...
Bad vibes.
Bad vibes. Just bad vibes. There was... yeah. I won't get into it. But... and then I left that and then was just kind of floating. Yeah. Not really sure. And then moved to Charlotte after college and joined a church. And I went through the membership class. And I was also at the time living with my now best friend, and she is not Christian at all, and very involved, like very politically focused. And I was very checked out of politics. Yeah, so she would be like, Parker, pay attention.
Wake up.
And I was also like very depressed in my old job, so I wasn't even awake at anything. But then I went to the membership class of this church, and I read on the sheet of paper that that leadership roles would be given to qualified men, and we would not change to cultural norms or whatever it was. And I have never so quickly become angry in my entire life.
Yeah, I was going to say bad vibes.
And I'm like, I get angry, but I had never been so I saw red.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't think. I was just filled with rage. I guess I was like, wow. It was the first time reading on a sheet of paper that I was not allowed to do something because I am a woman.
Yeah.
So then I started doing research and reading, and I brought one of the books I read that helped me. It's called Fashioned to Reign by Chris Valentin. He's from Bethel, so some people have issues with that, but whatever. It's got sources. But I was just like, I don't think I can get on board with this. And when that's kind of the first real admission I had to thinking, okay, either I can't get on board with this, and if this is true about Christianity, then I don't think I can get on board. Yeah. Which was very terrifying. And then the other option was, okay, maybe it's not true. Maybe this isn't actually true for Christianity. So what does that look like? Both are very painful, because one is like everything I've believed my entire life is thrown out the window, and the other is I'm surrounded by people that to me in my mind were lying.
Yeah.
Or just wrong. So then it kicked off a journey for however many years of me just stripping away everything I thought I knew and rebuilding. And then in 2020, like many people, after COVID and then George Floyd, and there was just a lot of, like, we were all forced to stop and look at the world.
Yeah.
And I had gotten more politically involved before then and learned a lot. But then 2020, I just couldn't. I was like, all right, I'm done. You know, like, this is horrible. I don't know. I learned even more.
I mean, if there's a breaking point to have, I think that's a good breaking point to have.
It was a pretty good breaking point. Like, a fetal position on my bed, like, just sobbing because everything was wrong. And then I finally found, and I church hopped. I left. Obviously, I did not stay at that one church. Went to another one. They still, I believe in complementarianism, which was the women have a certain role, not leadership roles. And I just didn't fit. Everyone was the same person, and I was not that person. Yeah. And then I found the church that I currently go to, and I immediately loved it. Very artsy focused, very equality. Like 50% of the elders are women, 50% are men.
Nice.
And they are focused on social justice. Like, when I walked into the church, there's a whole wall of recommended books for social justice. Like, The New Jim Crow was one of the books that they had up there. Anyone is welcome. LGBTQ plus is welcome there. They have the core beliefs of Christianity, and oh gosh, I forget the way they say it, but it's in the core beliefs, we are strict. Like, this is what we believe. Everything else is flexible. Like, we can discuss these things, but secondary kind of.
Yeah.
Which is where I got to, where I was like, okay, does me believing that homosexuality is not actually a sin, is that, like, does that mean I'm going to hell?
Is that bad?
And so once the women in church, and unfortunately, as human beings, unless we experience something ourselves, it's way harder for us to think about other people's experiences in that realm. But once I thought about that, when I was like, it's historical context, this might not be right.
Yeah.
And then the next one was that LGBTQ plus community, where I was like, this also never felt right. And my thought process is, maybe something feels wrong because it is wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe what I've been told is wrong.
Yeah.
All that to say, I mean, there's also, I obviously could go on forever, but the BEMA podcast in the past year has BEMA. Marty Solomon has been very helpful in that it goes through the Bible from the Eastern perspective, as it was originally intended, talking about how the creation story is actually, it's a poem.
Yeah.
It's not actually a lab report.
Yeah.
Maybe we don't need to take it as a lab report. We can take it as, like, what am I trying to learn from it? And it's just like loosening the reins on having to grasp God.
Yeah.
That maybe we don't that quote that I told you from Flannery O'Connor, where it was, a God that you understand is a God that is less than you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I will say, too, that you were the first. So a lot of stuff that you and I have talked about, we, like, I knew a lot of this, like, knowledge before talking to you. And there was a weird feeling when I very first started talking to you, because you were the first person that actually understood, like, the things that I was saying. And there was a lot of knowledge that I had that whenever I would express it, you were like, yeah, exactly. And then you would, like, dive even deeper into it. I'm like, you're the first person, like, what was it? When we were talking about, Hagar, whenever we were talking about Hagar and, like, the whole story of Sarah and Abraham and, like, who was the chosen people of God and everything, and how Hagar also is the one who begot, like, all of Islam. And where Sarah and Abraham are the ones who, like, the Jews were descended from. And they were both promised to be God's promised, or, like, chosen people. But people don't know that. Like,
they were promised, like, God promised to take care of Hagar.
Yeah.
And her son. And because she is the first person to say the name of God that means, I see, or, like, I see you, the one who sees me, or something like that. What she calls God is the name for the one who sees you.
Wow. Okay. Cool.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
She was like, I'm seen.
Yeah. But yeah, so I thought that was really cool because you were, and whenever I started talking to you too, you were the first person that helped me understand that like the version of Christianity that you and I saw was a like Eastern version of Christianity, which is where it came from. Like I've never had anybody differentiate between like, no, what's here in America is a Western version of Christianity. Like it's not what Christianity originally was.
Right, which is what I had been learning, and I'm trying to go back into, I'm trying to tap into the Jewish history, like more and more. I started doing Shabbat dinners on Friday nights. It's been a few weeks since I've been able to get back into it, but I don't know, because it's really important to the Jewish faith, and I'm like, well, Jesus was a Jew, you know, and this is a large portion of the faith that I hold, and yet I feel like in the Western world we've kind of forgotten about that. When Jesus observed the Sabbath and Shabbat, and so it's like, all right, well, maybe this is another way that you can experience God, is just through rest or through peace and nature and people, and there's just so many more options than the strict. And like the disciplines are important for sure, but I had gotten so bitter and felt like I'd been lied to for so long, and that everything was wrong. That it was almost like if I caved and read my Bible like I was supposed to, then I like lost the argument, kind of a thing. But no. So
I will say that with whenever I grew up very Christian, I was kind of, and I use this word very freely, and it's probably not as dramatic as what it sounds, but I was like groomed by my religious leaders to be a religious leader. Like they all had me like preaching sermons on Sundays and shit like that as a teenager, and they all from the time that I was born was like, he's got a calling on his life. That's very like Pentecostal Baptist, like, you know, like very, you know. So from the time that I was like born, my mom said that whenever my preacher, whenever I was a baby, very first saw me, he was like, wow, he's got an anointing on him. He's like got a calling on his life, you know? And so from the time I was like little, I just was constantly like picked and pruned to end up being like a religious leader one day in whatever church I ended up in. And so with that, I knew my Bible very, very well. And I still you know, if you lose it if you don't read it, you know, like you kind of, but you'll remember the stories, you'll remember what is said, you'll remember certain things, but you won't really remember where. But I think it's kind of funny now that I'm older and I still know the Bible, but then I also know like the background to it too. Like I learned about like Judaism, and then also like the folk and mysticism parts of Judaism, and like what led into Christianity, and then also how there's like a time period that was considered pre-Christian that was actually really recent. It was like for a while after Jesus died, like in the 1500s, we still had pre-Christian quote unquote religious views and religions where they were still just trying to figure out what was Christianity, you know? And so knowing all of that and having that knowledge, whenever I then try to talk to people that are like from my hometown or like that I grew up with that went to the same church as I did or went to high school with me, when they try to talk religion with me and I debate with them, we kind of like run in a circle where they'll throw something at me and then I pull something from the Bible. And I'm like, okay, well, that's not correct because of X, Y, and Z. And here's the historical fact behind it. And it always ends with, they leave it alone, they'll drop it, and then they come back to me later with more information because they've researched what I told them. And I really started questioning, like, why does that happen? Like, why do I keep repeating this over and over and over again? And I realized to them, it's not debating to become more educated. It's debating to change how I view things. And that was a really big turning point in my religious views and my religious like journey, where I stopped sharing my spiritual and religious beliefs to try and change people's minds. And it's just like an education thing, you know, like I want to share what I believe with you, but that doesn't mean I want you to drop everything to believe in what I believe in. I want to share this with you because I think it's cool and I think it's pretty and I think that this is a really cool belief. But whenever I was younger, it was very much like I was sharing it to try to change people and like control people, you know? And I think that that's really interesting that you have found a way to have your religion, which I'm not saying that like you're the only person out there that's done this, but you've found a way to have Christianity and have those still like values and outlooks and everything that you have when you were growing up, but now you've found it in a way where you're not trying to control other people. You're not trying to condemn people to hell. And when you share your religion with people, you do it in the same way where like, this is beautiful to me. This is pretty to me. Like, I want to share it with you because I think it's really cool. You don't have to believe in what I believe in, but I think it's a cool perspective, you know?
Yeah.
So when did you kind of feel that shift for you?
Ooh. I would say out of college, living with my roommate, and like the more non-Christian friends that I accumulated, like most of my best friends are not Christian, and they are the loveliest, most wonderful, kind people ever. But we would have discussions about faith and religion, and they would say things that made them angry or that would frustrate them, and I was just like, you have a lot of good points.
Yeah.
And I couldn't argue with that. And then I also am very aware of religious trauma that other people have.
Yeah.
And I in no way think it's my place to negate other people's religious trauma, make them believe what I believe. You know, it's just not my place.
Yeah.
Like I'm an external processor too. So like, my poor roommate, when I was going through all of this, I was just processing everything, and she was just like, cool, bro.
I was like, yeah, okay.
This and this and this and this. And she's like, great, good for you. I don't know. I think that was the shift and I think it was also, I wanted people to stop telling me what to believe, you know?
Yeah.
And once I realized that a lot of the Christians around me, and in college it was that way too, when I left that college ministry, it was like we're worried about her, you know? And and that was I think my first real taste of like, because I'm not doing what you think I should be doing, you are now worried about me. Also in college, I was in a sorority, and people immediately thought I was judgmental, and because I didn't do the same things they did, and it took a long time for people to trust me, you know, and for people to be like, oh, okay, she doesn't hate us.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, no. And so I don't know, college was when I was like, I'm not going to judge you, and I'm not going to preach to you. It's not my place. And then after college was when I figured out how to talk about it as a me thing.
Yeah.
And not this should be a you thing.
Yeah. Well, I think I've never felt like you were trying to convince me of anything anytime you've talked about it. Like, and I have a lot of friends who are Christians, and they're all very same way. Like, even one of my friends who's super religious, he's like very Catholic. He grew up Pentecostal like I did, went through a little agnostic phase, and then, you know, now he's Catholic. And I mean, he's super like religious, and he still has like a few conservative views. So that's kind of put a distance between our friendship, but it's not like he's not like a raging like MAGA white supremacist person. So, you know, like, it's like, you're a decent human, I'll have you around, but we're just going to disagree. But all of my friends that are Christians are very good at communicating it in like a way, which I think that you and I probably talk about it a little bit more. Like, I would say you're one of the more like devout Christian friends I have. Like, it's very important to you. It's part of your everyday routine, and to be Protestant and also be that way, because in Catholicism, it's very much about like routine, ritual, things like that. So I think that you've mastered a way of expressing it that is a very much just you thing, you know? So I think that's cool. Whenever you were talking about people saying that you like worried about you because you weren't doing what they wanted you to do, I had a very similar instance that happened to me whenever I was in high school. And I was like one of the leaders in my youth group, and I was like co-leader of, did any of the churches you ever go to, did they have something called like the drama team or like the human video team?
Probably. Like, I don't think my youth group had it, but I know we had the,
Well, we did, and it's just, to me, looking back, and this is not me saying that someone's like praise and worship or religious practice or anything like that is cringy, but this specifically,
I understand,
very cringy. And I was like the co-leader of it and everything. Well, this is also around the time period that I know For those of you that can't see, she just gave a little shiver, and that's the same way that I feel when I look back at it. Sometimes, and I'm like, Mom, please stop, but my mom will tag me in like flashbacks, like, you know, on Facebook where it's like, this happened 10 years ago, and like it's me doing some type of weird religious shit at the front of the church, and I'm like, Mama, please stop. And of course, when I asked her to stop, she got so offended and was like, are you ashamed of you used to be worshiping God? And I'm like, no, I'm ashamed of how I did. Like, it was so cringy.
I think about some of the things. That shiver, I think about the things like in FCA that we would do.
Oh, yeah. I was the president of the FCA.
Same. Oh my gosh.
Oh my god, yeah. My senior year, I had to step down because gay, and people found out, and the vice president, honestly, she was just kind of a bitch. Like, I'm just gonna put it out there.
Thanks.
And she and I were friends throughout high school, but she was always very judgy toward me about being like whenever it came to Christianity, because I was always super chill, and I was always like friends with all the gay kids, friends with all the, like, I had friends who were Wiccan, I had friends that, you know, I just didn't really judge people. And looking back, like now, I had like this weird divide and like dissociation between like who I was. There were like two different me's.
Yeah.
It was like I would say, I'm a Christian, gay people are going to hell, you shouldn't date outside your race, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. But then I didn't actually believe it or feel that way. You know, like I'd sit there and preach it, but then when I saw someone doing it, I wasn't bothered by it. It was, you know, like I didn't like go and be like, you shouldn't, you know, like I didn't care. It was like I was almost just like reverbing everything that like I heard, you know?
Yeah.
And so, but whenever I was in high school and I was the co-leader of my like drama team, this was around the time that I started like realizing that I was gay. And I had known for a while, but when I very first told my mom about it in like the 6th grade, she was like, it's the devil, pray it away. And so I was like, oh, okay, cool. You know, like, it's that simple. I'll just pray about it, you know?
Oh, it'll be fine.
Yeah, and then I told her again in my like freshman year in high school. Same response, but that time she got like really dramatic about it, like pulled me up to the front of the church and was like, I see a demon oppressing him, and wrapped around his head, like, y'all pray over him. And like, yeah, It was a whole thing. Pentecostals, man. Whenever that happened, of course, that was a little traumatizing and scarring. But around this time, I opened up to a couple of my friends that I went to church with about this guy that I liked. And I've talked about him on a previous episode where he was not gay, but he would pretend to be gay and like text me and stuff like that. And like just to like, so he could like coax me into like texting him stuff, and then he would go make fun of me to my other friends. And I talked to him about 8 years later, and he was just like, you seemed like you had it together, and I don't know why, but that bothered me. And I just wanted to out you. Like, I wanted to prove that you, like, weren't this, like, pristine little nice Christian boy. And I was like, wow, okay, thanks. Well, you know, you were kind of a pinnacle part of my growth. So I guess in a way you helped. But I confided in some of my friends I went to church with that I liked this guy and that I was not going to do anything about it, that I had stopped talking to him and everything else. And, like, I was trying to be a good Christian. And for some reason, well, one of them had a crush on me, and it was a girl, and one of them had a crush on me, and they decided to take it upon themselves to go tell my youth pastor and youth pastor's wife. But for months, I had no idea that they knew. Like, no idea. And my youth pastor's wife was the person that was in charge of the drama team. Like, she was the adult over it. And she treated me so differently after that. And I knew she was, but I could not figure out why. And I like made it my mission to like earn her approval. And I finally one day just like opened up to her about it. And they made this like huge scene, but they didn't do it in like a, we've known about it, blah, 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 blah. They like immediately were like, let's pray. And like pulled, it was a Wednesday night too. And like, I don't know about you, but Wednesday nights have always been like super chill. Like, it's like we sit and we talk and we like read the Bible and things like that, you know, like we have discussions. And so
Is it always Wednesday?
I know. And so whenever that happened on a Wednesday, they were like, we're gonna pray about it and everything. And so I start crying because like church, and then like not being mad at me about it, but then also like wanting to help me, and also it's Pentecostal church, so you cry.
Yeah.
Just cause, you know. And so I start crying and everything, and they're talking to me about it, and basically, then she's like, we've known for a little while now, like, so-and-so told us, and, like, we're not mad at you, but we think you should step down from, like, your leadership and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, why? I was like, I'm not doing anything. It's just, like, a temptation I have. Like, I don't understand why I'm being punished. And they were like, well, you shouldn't be up there representing blah, 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 like, representing the youth group and blah, blah, and if this is what you're dealing with. I'm like, I didn't do anything wrong. Like, I texted the guy a little bit, and then I stopped, like, months ago. Like, I don't, you know, and it just was a whole, like that was just a very, that was a turning point for me. And that was later in high school. And I think that just, it made me think of it whenever you're talking about how they're like, we're worried about you. And now that I'm older, I told you even the other day, I went into a spiral rabbit hole learning about how like the Bible even pulled in homosexuality as a sin, and how, like, which I knew that it didn't happen until the 40s, but
1940s.
The 1940s, yes, 1946 to be exact.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew that, but I didn't know why. Like, I was just like, oh, here we go, Christians trying to do blah blah blah, and not all Christians, obviously. But then when I like deep dove into it and found out that it all started with America, because around that time is where like we very first started having like homosexuality like be a public thing, where it was like, I want to be able to be an outward gay person, you know, in America. And it was just, there was a lot of political things that went into it, and how then the Germanic company that did the translations of the Bible was then bought or paid by America to also do the same translation change, and how literally from the 40s until like the 80s and 90s, you can literally buy like Bibles that were older than that time that say pedophilia and, trigger warning, rape. And then after that, it got changed to homosexuality. And that just, going into that spiral, just, it just burns me alive. Because if I would have never been treated that way, I probably still would be a Christian. And like, that's the whole thing of Christianity, is like, you should be a fisher of men. You know, you were supposed to go out and like try to invite people. I mean, Jesus never once was like, you're a sinner, you're going to hell, fuck you. You know, like, he was never like that. He may have said like, hey, sin no more, come with me. But it was in instances where people were like hurting themselves, or they were putting themselves in danger, or there was something that was, they were like almost like deterring their worth. It was never an instance where someone was loving someone of the same sex, you know?
Yeah. I mean, well, because that's like, again, my awake enlightenment, you could say, I don't know, started with women, but like, I didn't grow up with that being an issue, and then it just became one. And then also, but the homosexuality thing has always been something that it kind of like, I think about how aligned I was on the right side of it, the far right as in direction, not correct.
Not correct, yeah.
On the far right side of it, of like, I mean, yeah, but then I was able, like, legally, everyone should have equal rights. Like, why? That has never been to me like a problem.
Wow.
Yeah.
Revolutionary thought.
Whoa.
We have those all the time.
Equal
like,
rights?
What?
Crazy. And then, but then honestly, and we've laughed about this before, but Queer Eye.
Yeah.
Queer Eye came out. And I was like, oh my gosh, these 5 men love people better than anybody I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And they were kind, and these people that have historically shown them hatred,
yeah,
and they only showed them love.
Mm-hmm.
And like, they're just wonderful, and they treat people so well, and it's just so beautiful. And I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And then I, you know, and would learn more, and I was like, yeah, this just doesn't seem, it doesn't track. Like,
Yeah.
with the God that I claim to know and claim to follow, this doesn't track.
Yeah.
And I literally yesterday watched a Law & Order SVU episode where this was kind of a central theme of homosexuality being a sin and like causing such heartache and tragedy in a family. And I cried watching it. At one point, a guy, he said, if God doesn't make mistakes, how can this be a sin if he made me this way?
Yeah.
And it just like broke my heart. Like, because it's not. It doesn't. And if you look at, and when I was doing the stripping away of everything I thought I knew, and I was like, all right, I'm going to start at the bottom. What is my basic? All right, Jesus. All right. Looking at the Gospels. When did he ever talk about homosexuality? Never. And this is a whole other conversation we do not need to get into, but he never talked about abortion.
Oh, gosh.
He never said that women cannot have leadership roles.
Yeah.
And he, in fact, he lifted up women. He singled women out. The first people to ever preach the gospel were women. because he went to them.
Wow. Tell me about this, because that's news to me.
Well, okay, so after Jesus was resurrected, Mary goes, the two women, they go to see him, and he first appears to them. He chooses them to be first. Oh my gosh,
you're right.
And he says, go and tell.
I completely forgot about that.
They go and tell.
Wow.
Not even, and then before that, actually.
Mary and Martha? Was it? No.
Mary. Not Martha. No. I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever. Two women.
That's what's important. There's a Mary. There's a lot of Marys. We got a lot of Marys in the Bible, and it's one of them.
Yeah. But even before that, actually, you have the woman at the well.
Yeah.
Who had been married 5 times.
Yeah.
And Jesus goes and he tells her. He tells her everything she's ever done and says, "No, I'm here for you. I love you." And she's like, "Can I tell everybody?" And he goes, "Go." And so she goes and tells.
Chills.
Yeah. The first women, or the first people to preach Jesus to others were women.
See, Jesus, a feminist.
He was a feminist. He taught women when they were not allowed to learn.
Yeah.
And he never once said you can't be gay.
Yeah.
According to the Gospels that we have, that we hold so dear, it wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, all right, let's just go back to the basics.
Yeah.
And
what did Jesus say while he was here?
Yeah. What happened to WWJD?
Honestly.
Come on.
Flashback.
Well, and one quote from my fashion terrain book that applies, I believe, both to LGBTQ plus and women. From the epistles, we gain God's insight into how. And epistles are like the letters in the New Testament.
Okay.
It's like Romans, 1st, 2nd Corinthians. Paul writing to churches about their problems. From the epistles, we gain God's insight into how to deal with certain issues in a specific setting, but you cannot superimpose God's situational counsel over universal circumstances and have it be redemptive in every situation.
Yeah.
Cultural context, historical context.
Yeah.
And also translations.
Yeah.
Like, the Bible has been morphed, and there are a lot of things that have withstood the test of time that still bring me back, where I'm just like, okay.
Yeah.
But we have to use critical thinking.
Yeah.
We have to use critical thinking.
And there's not, especially, I know, and I'm not going to say all Pentecostal churches are like this, but at least the ones that I grew up in, because I church hopped a lot too, whenever I was younger. And growing up in those churches, critical thinking is not something that they encourage.
No, they're not allowed.
Yeah, you go to your Sunday service, and your preacher preaches from the Bible, and he tells you what he thinks about it, and he tells you what God told him about it, and then that's it. And if you disagree or you challenge or anything like that, then that's blasphemous. Yeah. And of course that's kind of shitty, and my mom likes to tell me all the time, well, remember our preacher really liked me being in his services because I did challenge him, and I did say whenever I interpreted something from the Bible differently than him. And I'm like, okay, good for you. Good for you for being a woman with an opinion in a church. But your opinion never was, hey, these people that we're discriminating against, maybe we shouldn't. It was never anything like that. It would be that you thought that whenever someone said thou this way, it meant one thing where the preacher thought it was something else, and it should have been thou'st or something. It was never thou'st.
Oh man. Yeah. Well, there's a verse in the Bible that's, your thoughts are higher than my thoughts, your ways are higher than my ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a believer that has been used to manipulate people to deny their own thoughts and feelings and their gut instinct.
Yeah.
I'm a gut-led person.
Yeah.
Which usually does me okay.
Very instinctual.
Yes. If it doesn't feel right, then I'm like, ugh.
Yeah.
No. If it feels right, I'm in. It leads to impulsive tattoos, but it's fine.
It's cool.
It's cool.
No regrets.
Literally none. So, when you teach people that your thoughts and your feelings are inherently wrong, then they, me being angry about women in the church is sinful.
Yeah.
Because it's I don't understand. And one of my 5 or 6 angry writings that I have on my computer about Christians one is countercultural. And it was when I was just kind of lashing out when I was first discovering all of this. And I was like, since when? This is only women being suppressed is only countercultural in the past 50 years.
Yeah.
You know, like before then it was right in line.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't radical at all. It made sense.
Yeah.
And similar to how like homosexuality was added in the 1940s. The concept of complementarianism is in the 70s.
Yeah.
1970s, when feminism was really taking off.
Yeah.
It literally male leaders, SBC, Southern Baptist Convention, typically. I think that's where they started it. They came together and figured out, in my words, a new way to word it to keep women in a certain spot.
Of course.
And so that they would feel okay about it.
Yeah.
And I read a letter from a church in Charlotte about complementarianism and fueled me with rage. Shocker. And it was just like, these are not unequal positions. Yet, only the positions of power are only in straight man's hands. Like, so they're equal. They're equal parts. You know, they're just different. They're complementary.
Yeah.
However, to be complementary, you have to be equal and opposite. It's not. It's suppressive. Yeah. It's oppressive. Whatever.
You know, that sort of process of like rewording things, or we found a new translation, blah, blah, that has been happening since the beginning.
That's
like
true.
It's been happening for so long. And there were two major councils, and I think we've talked about this before, that, and I'm one of them I cannot remember, but the other one was the Council of Nicaea, and I forget which one of them happened, but it was during like the very first formation of like what the Christian beliefs were. I want to say they happened like between like 300 and 500 AD. And it's basically the church that became the Catholic Church, because Catholicism was like the beginning and then it broke off into all the different things and everything. Those two major councils, what blew my mind is that, so the way I was raised in like Pentecostal and like Baptist world and everything, Southern Baptist, they make it seem like the Bible was like written chronologically. All these people, all these men got together and were like, all right, you're going to write this and you're going to write this and you're going to write this and we're going to put it together and it's going to be the Bible. Okay. And that's not how it happened. That's like not how it happened at all. These books, these individual books, the reason why they're called books is because they were books. They were each their own books. Like Genesis was its own book. And what a lot of people don't realize too is that the book that you see in the Bible isn't necessarily the book that was actually originally written. Genesis has several different versions to it, and even has parts of it where it was like talking about Lilith, who was the first wife to Adam, and Eve was the second wife, talking about how Lilith wanted to be equal to Adam, and he didn't like that, so she was like, in some versions she got kicked out of the Garden of Eden, and then some versions she left, but no matter what, she ended up in hell and she became like the mother of demons and stuff like that, and like basically was like, I can be equal down here, you know. And once again, associating like an equal, powerful woman with evil, but you know, whatever. And so what people
Wanda.
Oh gosh. Oh, MCU, how you have cursed us. But yeah, so this has been happening for so long, and in both of the councils of Nicaea, like the Council of Nicaea and the other one, whichever one happened first, I probably should have googled it before hopping into this, but it is what it is. They basically, like in the first one they had, were like, we like these books, and we're going to use these books, and we're going to use these different versions of these books. We might cut out a little bit of this book and keep that in there, and you know, whatever else. But then in the second council, they were like, actually, we don't like these books anymore, so we're going to scoot those out. You know, and we have documentation that shows that did happen just like that. And that's where we get the Apocrypha from, which is, you know, I think it's like 12 additional books in Catholicism that's part of the Bible and everything. And it gives a lot of cool insight to the books that are still in there. But we're still missing a lot. Like there's a whole sect of Christianity that's very briefly mentioned in Revelations that people always gloss over, that was very feminist. And it was made by like the seventh deacon of the Christian church, like the seventh official deacon, where it saw Aphrodite as a counterpart to Jesus, because, you know, there's tons of Greek and Roman mythology like influence in the Bible. And so they saw Aphrodite as like, where because the church was already becoming so patriarchal. Thank you. Yeah,
I
that
have a
word.
lot of practice.
Yeah, fuck the patriarchy. Anyways, thanks T Swift. But so because it was already becoming so male driven, people were like, well, Jesus was here for us. That's why it says you are supposed to be fisher of men, blah, 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 blah. So this one dude was like, well, if Jesus is for us, who's for the ladies? And so that's when he was like Aphrodite, because there's like different correlations between her story. There's different correlations between her story and Jesus' story, where there was both like Jesus was the physical embodiment of God, but then if you look at the juxtaposition between Greek mythology and Roman mythology, Aphrodite has like a heavenly version of herself and then a physical version of herself through that transformation. And so because of that, he was like, ooh, Aphrodite could be a good, like, I mean, she did this and she did this and before Jesus did, so maybe we could have her be for the ladies. And he got deemed as like a heretic. And just for trying to give the ladies something, like,
I mean, to be fair, I see why.
Yeah, but how cool would it have been if we would have had like the Greek pantheon be part of like Christianity today, okay? Which I mean, it kind of is, but not really.
Feels like a lot to try to digest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like, it's not a hard leap to have Jesus here for everybody.
Yeah.
Like it's not because of how focused on women he was.
Yeah.
Like he was very intentional about it.
Yeah.
And men's sec. But yeah, I don't know. I think for me, and then I also, my other book that I read that I tell all my friends to read, Learning to Walk in the Dark by Barbara Brown Taylor. Basically, she talks about solar Christianity, which is where anything bad, like any negative feelings, means you're not doing well and you're not, like darkness equals bad. And she talks about how that concept has been a problem in a lot of areas of life, has been a big problem with our treatment of people of color, like equating darkness with bad.
Yeah.
So many things. And so she explored darkness and explored like the idea that God is not something we can grasp.
Yeah.
And so that's where, and I think you and I have talked about it, where it's like we are all choosing to believe something in the world. Whether or not you choose to believe in nothing, or you choose to believe in a variety of things, or I choose to believe in Christianity, I believe it's true, because if it's not, that's a bummer.
You're like, I've kind of lived my whole life believing this. If it's not, yikes.
Yikes. Well, and at one point, and my pastor had said this in a sermon that just it just hit my soul and made me feel good, where he said, sometimes all you got is you believe in it, because if that's not it, then it's nothing. And that's where I had gotten down to that, like, if that's not it, then there's nothing.
Yeah.
And I don't want there to be nothing. So for right now, I'm just holding on my fingertips. And then and you do, like, you've told me about those councils and learning about the different things that have been put together over time and how it just changed and morphed. And so that inherently makes me it makes me want to loosen my grip, because I feel like if you grip so tightly to what you've always known and what you've always read, and like grip so tightly to the scriptures as we see them in the English Standard Version, or which boo. But I was taught that was the best one, and then I learned about it. We could get into that, but we won't. Yeah. And you grip so tightly onto that, and then you start learning about even just learning about the Bama podcast. We're just saying, hey, maybe it's a poem. Yeah. Where it's like earth shattering for a lot of people.
Critical thinking outside the box.
Well, when you're taught your whole life, you're not allowed to. Yeah. And then, but like if someone introduces the idea that this might not be exactly factual, that maybe this is just a poem, if you're holding on so tightly to it as you've been taught, then it just shakes your whole faith. Yeah. And which is really, really hard. And something she talks about in Learning to Walk in the Dark is the difference between belief and faith. Oh yeah. Where we have whittled things down to like what you believe means you have faith. Whereas faith is like what you trust or loyalty in something beyond the self, and not belief in a set formula of theological truths. So there's like, we've whittled people down to whatever you believe is your faith.
Yeah.
And if you believe something different, then you don't have faith.
Yeah.
And like, it's tragic if you believe that, because then it just makes it so much more difficult to go through life. And when you raise questions, when you ask questions like, hey, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And then you think, oh, I'm not Christian because I'm like, ooh, this belief, this truth that I think is true might be a little more flexible than I thought. Fuck, I'm not even a Christian.
Yeah.
And so I've like watched people go through this too. Where even just having negative emotions towards God, and you're just like, ugh, I'm not even a Christian, which is not true.
It's not true.
It's not true. And so that book really freed it up. So this is from Learning to Walk in the Dark. I cannot say for sure when my reliable ideas about God began to slip away, but the big chest I used to keep them in is smaller than a shoebox now. And then I skipped to, it's nice to talk to people about what it is like to feel more and more devoted to a relationship that we are less and less able to say anything about. The slippage started with the language of faith, which I had spoken fluently for a long time. After years of teaching other people what words like sin, salvation, repentance, and grace really meant, those same words began to mean less and less to me. When I had first learned them, they had helped me to make sense of the tumult both inside and outside, giving me special names for what was happening, as well as a sturdy framework for managing it. Then, so gradually that it is hard to say when things changed, those same words began to sound more like stuffed pillows, things to be placed between a person and the hard bones of life so that less bruising occurred. Although I knew what sin meant, there were other words with more nuance in them that struck with more force: betrayal, brokenness, forgetfulness, deadly distance from the source of all life. I could never figure out what made these words less meaningful to people of faith than the word sin, but they noted the difference. Why can't you just say sin? But I had questions of my own. When had the language of faith stopped offering a handle on lived experience and become a container for it? Wasn't that like asking God to act inside a box? Once the words began to break off, the landslide was hard to stop. Once you have emerged from whatever safe religious place you were in, recognizing that your view of the world is one worldview among many, discovering the historical Jesus, revolutionizing your understanding of scripture, and updating your theology. Once you've changed the way you do church, or you can no longer find a church within a 50-mile radius in which you can let your guard down long enough to pray. Once the Dalai Lama starts making as much sense to you as the Pope or your favorite preacher, and your rare but renovating encounters with the divine reduce all your best words to dust, well, what's left to hold on to?
Yeah.
I do not believe I am describing a loss of faith in God here. Instead, I believe I am describing a loss of faith in the system that promised to help me grasp God, not only by setting my feet on the right track, but also by giving me the right language, concepts, and tools to get a hook on the real thing when I found it. After so many years of trying to cobble together a way of thinking about God that makes sense so that I can safely settle down with it, it all turns to nada. There is no permanently safe place to settle. I will always be at sea, steering by stars. Yet, as dark as this sounds, it provides great relief because it now sounds truer than anything that came before.
Yeah.
I feel like that's just such a good summary of what we're talking. Like, it's once you realize that, like, once I realized, oh, nothing's ever gonna like fully make sense, and it's not ever fully gonna be graspable, and I can't put God in a box. I'm just like, oh, well, then I can just experience it, you know? Come on.
Exactly.
The world is so beautiful.
It is. And that's what, whenever you were talking about how it's like either God or nothing, I remember like whenever you were talking about like that struggle between like, oh, well, I either believe this and this is real, or if it's not, then there's nothing. And I remember this was like, looking back, I always thought that I was just like one way whenever I was a kid, but like I said, there were two me's, and there was the me that I was projecting, and then there was the me that had like the critical thinking, you know. And I'll never forget this one dude at my church, and he was like an older guy. I was friends with one of his sons, and he was like, well, I'd rather live my life as a Christian and then, because I'd rather live and then die and find out I was wrong than live as not a Christian and die and realize I was wrong. And whenever he said that, I was like, okay, what if you're wrong and there's not just a void? Like, what if you're wrong and another religion was right? Like, and that's from a child. I remember thinking that, like, when he said that, I was like, that's so close-minded. Like, you're saying that your religion is the only possible religion that's out there. But in reality, it could be a mix of all of them. Like, we could be experiencing things from one point of view because that's how God, the universe, creation, whatever you want to call him / her / them, that could just be how they want you to perceive them. That could be just the relationship they want to build with you, And whenever I got out of Christianity and like started exploring other religions, I never felt like, I honestly am very appreciative that I started in Christianity because it gave me this like closeness and this like emotional relationship with whatever is out there, and I still fully believe in God. I think Jesus was super cool and I love Jesus, and that's one of the only people that like we have in like as a religious leader, which I hate to even say he was a religious leader, but he's like one of the only people that I can ever actually get behind. And I'm like, if Jesus came to me right now and was like, hey, I want you to give up your entire life and follow me, and we're going to go teach peace, love, and acceptance, I'd be like, I say less. I will drop everything, like
I'm in.
Yeah. And so with that, like that was such a cool background to have. And then to me, it was like a starting point. It wasn't like I'm unlearning what I learned there to now have to relearn something else. It was like I started in Christianity, but then I started studying like Hinduism, and that became a super cool, like I was fascinated with Hinduism for such a long time. And then I found out that there were toxic parts of Hinduism too. So then I shifted to Buddhism, and I thought Buddhism was super cool. And then I found out there were toxic like things in Buddhism too. And it became this journey of like learning how has God connected with all the different types of people of the world before we were all even connected, before there even was Christianity, before there was even documented religion. How has he connected with all of them? And that kind of gave me like a cool like outlook on what he can look like to people, and like what he can look like to me. And to me, I actually being here in Charlotte and connecting with people like you who are very devout Christians and very serious about your faith, the way that the people were that I grew up with, but you're not judgmental and you're not conservative and you are very educated and, you have critical thinking skills and you care about other people that don't believe the same way as you. Being around you guys has allowed me to pick back up some of my like Christian outlooks on things that I didn't realize I was missing in my faith and missing in my spirituality. Still not a Christian, but there's a lot of things that I like. It made relearning it here has made my spirituality stronger. Like one of them is like the ask and you shall receive. I've always been like a big believer in manifesting, but there's honestly like this toxicity in today's like spirituality and spiritualism too, that's like free thinking and manifesting and you're one with source and all this other stuff. There is a toxicity to that too, where it's like, just be positive, radiate positivity, raise your vibration, and you will be good. You'll be part of the new world. You'll be part of the 5D, and this world's problems will not affect you.
That is like a foreign language.
Yeah, and that's
sorry.
And that just puts a lot of pressure on people. That puts a very similar pressure to what toxic Christianity does. Like that puts a very just a pressure on, I have to be good, I have to do this, I have to do that. And so whenever you're trying to quote unquote manifest your reality, there's this constant pressure on, well, I have to be positive, and if I fail, I'm not being positive enough, and so on and so forth. But sometimes it's not up to you. Sometimes the world is unpredictable. I mean, we live in an unpredictable reality where good things and bad things can happen at any point in time. So sometimes you just ask, whatever the universe, God, whatever you call them, you just say like, hey, I'd really like this. And then you release it. And that comes as part of faith, that's having faith that your God, the way that you see him, has your best interest in mind. And if you ask for something, it will be given to you, or something better will be given to you. And you'll see why that thing you asked for wasn't meant for you in the first place. And that was something that like I have kind of left behind in Christianity. And then I relearned here where it's like, sometimes you could just ask. Like sometimes you can leave it up to your higher power and let them do it. It doesn't have to all be on you.
Yeah. I mean, that makes me happy that you've like being here, but I enjoy. I feel like my journey, my spiritual journey. Oof, I really don't like saying that. I don't know why. It makes me. It's kind of been like not a goal, but like I want to be someone anyone can be around and can talk to about it, and like still. I mean, you already talked about it. Like, still make clear, like, I do believe in Christianity, and I believe that it's true, and I believe in Jesus, but not make you feel like you are lesser if you do not believe in it. That makes me happy. And you said something else. I was going to be devil's advocate. The concept of believing in Christianity is like closed-minded and arrogant to believe that your religion is true. In my mind, it is the same concept as believing anything could be true. Because because it either way, like if saying that every religion is a version of truth, is saying that every religion is wrong.
Well, I don't think that every religion is a version of the truth. I would look at it in a very omniscient standpoint, where it's like no religion is true, but there's truth in all of them. And but the thing is, like, truth is relative. Truth is like...
Exactly. So, that's just what I'm saying. It's just like, it goes back to we're all choosing to believe in something. Yeah. And so it's like me choosing to believe in Christianity and that is true. I could be wrong one day.
Well, I mean, it's your truth, though. I mean, you can't be wrong because it's your truth, Like...
I mean, there's something is true, there is something is true, but none of us have any idea what it is. Like none of us can actually know what is true wholeheartedly. We can only believe what we believe. Yeah. And everybody believes something. Yeah. Even if you believe nothing, you're believing something. Yeah. So it's just kind of like, that's where I'm just like, yeah, do I agree with Western Christianity? I more and more so do not. That's why I like differentiate so much now, because sometimes I feel like I believe in a different religion than other Christians. So it's weird. Yeah. It's weird. Like, we call ourselves Christians, but there's something else she said in this book. It's amazing. But my inability to speak of God without 1,000 qualifiers. Where it's like, I'm a Christian, but I'm liberal. Yeah. I believe you have rights.
But I'm a feminist. I'm pro-gay.
I'm a Christian, but I'm not an asshole. I'm a Christian.
I'm not trying to control you, okay?
I'm a good person, I swear.
I don't want to send you to hell.
So that's my one thing, is like, we're all doing our best with what we have. Yeah. And I think that was a really nice realization at some point in my life. I don't know when I got there, maybe in therapy. Where
therapy is amazing.
Yeah, where she was like, you did the best with what you had.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. I say that all the time. Yeah. Like, that's something that was a big part, and like not even my spiritual growth, but like my mental health growth, was realizing that I should not judge younger me, because younger me did the best that he could.
It's like you're in my therapy session.
Literally, because I used to be so judgmental to who I was whenever I was younger, like even as a child and then into college, because there were a lot of toxic traits that I had to really grow out of, and there were a lot of decisions that I made, like to stay in situations that were bad for me way too long. But I then realized, like, well, younger me also chose to go to therapy. Younger me also made some really good decisions that invested in my future. Younger me did a lot of cool things that I now today get to benefit from. So like, younger me did the best that he could, and I'm very proud of him. So yeah.
Good for baby Sam.
Yeah.
I have said before, gosh, I just want to punch baby Parker in the face. So maybe we don't. Maybe we don't do that. And I was like, okay.
Oh wow. Well,
yeah, life is hard.
It is. Well, on that note,
Let's not end on that. I wanted to read one poem I wrote. Okay. And we'll end on that, because I think it's good, because it speaks to it really, since I'm the guest host here. Yeah. It's about me.
It's all about you.
This was when this year, because I had gone to Wilmington. I worked in Wilmington for 6 months and was very alone and then came back to Charlotte and felt like I had to fit into skin that didn't fit anymore because I had solidified my new foundation that I rebuilt, you know, like I solidified my beliefs, and then I came back and I was surrounded by people who didn't share them. And then I went to a writing group at my church because we have a writing group at church and it's so great. And in 15 minutes, I just cranked out this poem and just unleashed it all. And then I felt very grounded.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's a nice thing to end on. It's called I Wonder. I wonder why we do the things we do. I wonder why God lets us. I wonder how Christians manage to profess faith in Jesus while simultaneously spreading so much hatred. I wonder how the church is able to preach generosity while also calling the needy freeloaders and lazy. I wonder how Christians can read and know the story of the Good Samaritan, how they can read Jesus' words telling us to love our neighbor, which includes the foreigner, while simultaneously calling for the deportation and degradation of immigrants. I wonder how Christians justify getting angry about taxes, saying the government is stealing my money, when God is very clear that it is not our money in the first place. I wonder if God is angry about the way Christians portray him, and we wonder why non-believers don't believe. I wonder how Jesus feels when we walk or drive by the homeless man on the side of the street, looking away so as to avoid eye contact, because deep down we know that that homeless man is Jesus.
Mm.
I wonder where God is in the mass shootings, in the pandemic, in the hurting, the hunger. I wonder if I will go into those places to try to find him. I wonder if maybe I could bring him there.
Very deep. I mean, I thought about just a lot of things that I experienced and witnessed growing up, and again, like Pentecostal Southern Baptist Church. And one of the things that was like hounded in our heads whenever I was younger was that it was in like the puppet ministries, where like I don't know what churches have with the puppets, but anyway, did your churches ever do the puppets for the kids?
Maybe, probably.
So there was this one where it was this woman that she got a call from Jesus. And Jesus was like, hey, I'm going to come to your house this evening. Mm-hmm. And I want to chat with you. Like, I want to be a guest at your house. And she was like, okay, cool. Like, awesome. Super exciting, right? And so she starts, and this was like modern day. So he like calls her on the cell phone and she's like, oh my gosh, Jesus is coming. So she's like going crazy, like, you know, cleaning up her house, and it's getting close to the time, but it's not quite there yet. It's probably like an hour before he's supposed to be there. And she's running frantic, trying to clean. And she hears like a doorbell, like her doorbell rings or whatever. And so she runs to the door, and it's a homeless man. And he's like, I'm so sorry to bother you, but like, I'm starving. Yep.
Yeah, I remember these. Okay.
And so he was like, I'm starving. Like, it's cold outside. Do you have any food? Do you have any water you could give me? And she like makes him feel so, she's like, I get, come in, I guess, but you can't stay long. I have a really important guest coming, blah, 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 blah. And like basically just treats him terribly, like gives him like scraps, gives him water. He asks if he can use a phone. And she like makes a comment on how dirty he is. And is like, well, you have to wash your hands first. Like, you can't touch my phone until you wash your hands. And so basically he's like super grateful for everything that she's done, and he leaves. And so then he gets a call, or she gets like another call on her phone, and it's Jesus. And she's like, hey, everything's ready for you, blah, blah, blah. He's like, I've already come and gone. And she's like, what? And he's like, I was the homeless man that came to you just then, and you treated me poorly. And how you've said this before. Say the quote. Say it.
It's from Jesus's words. Whatever you do to the least of these, you do unto me.
Exactly. And that's something that hearing you read that took me back to them, because the very people that taught that in like puppet ministries whenever I was a kid and everything else, never once have I seen them ever give money to a homeless person, mm-hmm. give food to a homeless person. Never once have I ever seen them do something genuinely out of kindness. And it's like kindness was hounded into me as a child. So why do we not see that? You know, I know this one, it was actually my youth pastor's wife, that she used to call, oh my gosh, I think about this and I'm so like, it just makes me want to cry. She used to call one of the only like Asian restaurants that we had in our hometown and order something in a really bad like Asian accent, making fun of them.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but it's like, but would teach love and peace and like being kind to your neighbor and like being kind to people that are different from like, and that's not Jesus.
No, I mean, you know, the Bible was once used to promote slavery, and it's so manipulated, and there are a lot of political, which we didn't get into, maybe on another episode.
We can do a part two.
We can do a part two about how abortion and homosexuality are used to make conservatives get any moral high ground.
Yeah. Use as tools to control us.
And they're brilliant.
Oh,
They're
goodness.
brilliant. So that's for part 2.
Yeah,
We
part
can get
2.
into politics.
Goodness. Well, all right. On that note, we shall close. Thank you guys so much again for tuning in. I am Sam Brown, your host. And if you want to find me on social media, you can find me at Sammed If You Do. That's SAMMED If You Do. I am that on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you want to find the podcast, you can find it at Enhance on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Anchor, or Enhance Podcast on YouTube. Parker, do you want to promote anything? Anything you want to throw out there?
Oh, promote anything? Not really. I will promote someone else's book, Learning to Walk in the Dark. I've read a bunch from it by Barbara Brown Taylor. And then Fashioned to Reign, if you want to learn about how women have things to say.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please come back next week. We have new episodes every Saturday and bonus episodes the third Wednesday of every month. Bye.
Enhance your peace
Your joy.
and your existence.
Do